Welcome to Rare Connection, the podcast dedicated to connecting rare disease patients, educating medical professionals and the public, and and helping to find clinical trials for the 95% of rare conditions that still lack FDA-approved treatments. I'm your host, Joanna, and today's episode features an incredible guest, Risa, who lives with a rare condition called acromegaly. Risa's journey is one of resilience, self-discovery, and an unyielding passion for life. Diagnosed in 2018 with a tumor at the base of her brain, she faced a reality that reshaped her entire perspective. Instead of letting her diagnosis define her, she embraced life with an unstoppable spirit, traveling the world, trying new experiences, and advocating for awareness about rare pituitary diseases, which she believes are often underdiagnosed. Through her book, Road Unpaved, Border to Border with a Brain Tumor on Her Bike, and her work as an inspirational speaker, Risa shares her story to help others navigate the challenges of living with a rare disease. She is a fierce believer in living fully, unapologetically, and with deep human connection. Today we'll hear about her journey, the impact of her diagnosis, and what drives her to keep pushing forward. As always, please remember that this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. As always, please remember that this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. Nothing shared should be considered medical advice. Always consult with a healthcare professional before making any health related decisions. Now let's dive in to Risa's story. Risa, can you share share the story of how you were diagnosed with acromegaly? What symptoms led you to seek answers?
Yeah, so it started in 2011. 2010, uh, I had just completed my first Ironman race and at the top of my fitness. Um, and about a year later, a friend of mine asked me to do a 500-mile bike tour with her. And I was like, oh, yes, I'm in. But I started noticing changes in my body and I started having trouble with um, like recovering after a training workout, or I was having extreme weight gain. Um, almost like different hormonal changes in my body. So I kept going to see doctors about this. I kept saying, "Hey, there's something off. I don't know what it is. How do you explain this? How do you explain that?" And a lot of the doctors, two specifically, kept saying, um, "Gosh, I really don't know what to tell you. Your tests are coming back normal, and um, you look fine, and you don't need to worry." Okay. Um, and this went on for about 7 years. And it wasn't until 2018 when I started having severe, severe headaches. And they just never went away. It didn't matter how much water I drank, how much I took care of myself, just severe headaches. And I was barely sleeping maybe 2 hours a night. And I went back to my doctor and I said, "Look, I just have these horrible headaches. And aside from everything else that feels off in my body, I'd love to get an MRI just to rule everything out." And my doctor said, "Oh, I don't think you need one. You're you're an athlete. You just completed another Ironman race. You're active. You eat well. I'm not worried. I think you're fine." And I said, "Yeah, I hope I'm fine, but I really want to just for my own peace of mind, please order me an MRI." And she said, "No, I don't think you need one. You're probably overtraining or not drinking enough water. And besides, they're really expensive." And I remember sitting there for a moment thinking, okay, well, kind of like I did throughout the 7 years. Well, if they say nothing's wrong, then I guess nothing's wrong. I must be making it up. But something shifted in me that day. In that moment, I said, "You know what? Order me the MRI." And I remember her clearly turning around and started typing on her computer and shaking her head. And she was like, "Okay, but I don't think you need one." And so I went in and got my MRI almost right away. And 1 week later, I had an email from her saying, "You have an enlarged pituitary, go see an endocrinologist." And that was when my life was forever changed. It would never be the same from that point on.
So they just found it from the MRI.
So yeah, that was the start of my
Yeah.
diagnosis. I went on to see an endocrinologist. I had no idea what an endocrinologist was at that point. I didn't know what I was doing there. I didn't know what it meant to have an enlarged pituitary. There was nothing online, like not a whole lot online. And I didn't even know where to begin. Um, and so I went to see the endocrinologist, and suddenly I'm looking at my brain on the screen, MRI image of my skull with this giant tumor between my eyeballs. And I do have a picture of it if you want me to pull it up on
Yeah,
this.
if you can, that would be great. So
And yeah. And
I
so
know you
this,
have, I know in your book you actually have a name for your tumor too.
yes. And so this tumor, this big gray blob looking
Yeah.
thing here, that's totally filling up this area called the sella turcica, where the pituitary gland is housed. And so, to just give you an idea, the pituitary gland is the size of a pea. It's much smaller than this And so this tumor is basically taking up this whole space. And you can see, I don't know if you could see my arrow here, but
Yeah.
um, so that's my carotid artery. And you can see the tumor has wrapped around my carotid
Mhm.
artery there. And so yes, so I actually named my tumor Bubba. And I'll share more about that in a little bit. But I remember staring at this, still not grasping like what, okay, what is this? What are you telling me? And so not only did I learn about this tumor, my endocrinologist proceeds with, oh, and I'm 99% sure, certain I know what you have, the disease you have that goes with this tumor. And there's a simple test that'll confirm that. And I'm like, wait, what? This is not what I had in my plan for life. So that began my journey into diagnosis. And I went on to have brain surgery. They couldn't remove the entire tumor because it was so large at this point and had grown, like I said, wrapped around the carotid and too close to my optic nerve. And
Mhm.
so they couldn't get the entire tumor. So we had to look at treatments from there, such as radiation treatment and medications.
Mhm.
Mhm. And I can share a little bit about acromegaly as well. So what this tumor
Yeah.
does is it basically the pituitary gland controls all the other glands in the body.
Mhm.
And so the hypothalamus tells the pituitary what to do, and the pituitary like gives the marching orders to all our other glands, such as our thyroid and our adrenals. And so when the pituitary malfunctions, everything else malfunctions. And so what this tumor causes is excessive amounts of growth hormone being dumped into the body. And so physically, I never stopped growing. Um, and that includes everything, all my bones, my tissues, my organs, everything changes. All
Mhm.
my joints stop fitting together correctly. And bones don't necessarily grow in a uniform manner.
Mhm.
So I have bony lumps all over my body um, and things like my jaw being misaligned and so acromegaly goes on to cause all kinds of symptoms such as extreme fatigue, joint pain. You can have headaches, anything hormone related
Mhm.
is essentially haywire. And what I learned, I had no idea growing up because this isn't how we learn about hormones. Um, but hormones control everything,
Mhm.
just about everything in our bodies. And some believe, I've read that some believe that it even controls decision making as well. So so that just gives you an idea of like how important hormones are, and having them function properly is extremely important. So, yeah.
So, um, many pituitary disorders uh, go undiagnosed for years. Looking back, do you think uh, there were early signs that you missed?
Absolutely, looking back, yes. I actually don't present like a lot of the kind of what's the word I'm looking for? I don't present like a lot of acromegaly patients, the things that um, often happen, the changes in the body that often happen with acromegaly. Um, there's extreme facial feature changes and so forth. And I actually don't look like that. Um, and so that's partly why it took so long or can take so long to diagnose a person because not everyone fits the typical, like not everyone fits that same structure. As we know with all diseases, it's everyone's case is very individual. And but I did know, I was an extreme athlete and health fanatic, and I couldn't keep weight off of me. I was 40 pounds overweight. It didn't matter how well I ate. And there were other things like excessive hair growth, or I had braces 3 times because my teeth kept moving and changing, but significantly. And uh, thing like I said, like d weird bony growths throughout my body, and um, anything again hormone related. And so I noticed changes, and I kept looking at thyroid. But a lot of them were kind of either unexplainable or something that I could assign um, an explanation to. So, like, seriously, I had doctors telling me so much, like, nope, you're fine, your blood work's fine, I'm not worried. So I started finding reasons for all these changes in my body, like the hair growth get on my arms getting thicker. I was like, "Oh, well, I'm Romanian. It must be my heritage." And the fatigue, well, I do pack a lot into my schedule every day, and I'm always training and at the gym or working out. And maybe I'm not drinking enough water, or maybe I'm fooling myself. Maybe I'm eating more food than I really think I am. And so I'd go on these really strict diets, or I even went and sought help from Overeaters Anonymous because I thought maybe I was in denial that okay, maybe I am overeating and I'm in denial about it. I was really trying to find ways to explain these changes in my body. Um, so, so looking back, because I don't necessarily present as someone that might be more obvious with acromegaly, and because some of these symptoms can be explained away, it can be really difficult to diagnose someone like me, for sure.
So, um, what uh, what was your reaction when you received the diagnosis? How did it change your outlook on life?
Well, the first thing was relief. I felt really validated. It was almost 8 years of me getting to a point of pleading with people like, hey, I know something's wrong. Please believe me. But I even think my family and friends around me thought I was being maybe a hypochondriac, or, for example, lying about how much food I was eating. Um, and so I felt extremely validated.
Yeah,
And
and that's something that you're not alone in.
yeah,
I have family members who still believe I'm a hypochondriac, and they've known about my rare condition since I was 3.
wow.
So
Yeah.
it,
And you're right, Joanna. That doesn't go away. I have extreme fatigue now, but everyone's always known me as a doer. So, so I think there's a part of me that tries to still uphold that, but then there's a part of me that's like, hey, wait a minute. No, I'm exhausted. I have to take a break. I'm not lazy. I'm not trying to get out of it. I'm exhausted and I need you to hear me.
Mhm. So, um, see, so what is the treatment option? What treatment options have you pursued, and and what has your experience been with and been like navigating the healthcare system?
Yes, well, to yeah, kind of finish the last question, which is a good lead into this question, is I realized I had to have a voice. I had to start speaking up and trusting that, hey, if there's something, I had to trust myself. Like if something felt wrong, like I had to trust that. Um, so yeah, I didn't, there weren't a lot of options out there. There wasn't a lot of information out there about these tumors or this disease.
Mhm.
So I researched as much as I could. I talked to a lot of people. I was essentially given one of two options: be on medication for the rest of your life or have radiation treatment, and it'll take about 10 years to work. But if it works, you don't have to be on medication for the rest of your life. There's also, it's really common for these tumors to grow back. So the radiation could really stop that from happening. And I was really struggling with this decision. It felt like there was no good decision. To me, it was pick your poison.
Mhm.
And, um, at first I declined radiation treatment. But then I had this fear of, oh my gosh, if the tumor grows back, I can't go through this again. I can't go through brain surgery again and do all this again. Um, and the medications are really powerful medications, so those have their own side effects. Um, there just felt like there was no good answer. And after a lot of back and forth, I settled on radiation treatment, which now I'm regretting a little bit. Had I had more information and understood more of the treatments that were out there, I might have made a different decision. Um, I don't know, and it doesn't help for me to go back and wonder what if. But I guess my point of all this was like I did the best I could making a decision with the little bit of information that was out there.
Mhm. Um, how is living with a uh, brain tumor affected your day-to-day life, both physically and emotionally?
Yes, I am no longer the same person. Initially, I struggled with that. I struggled with being like leaving behind the super athlete. And I was extremely detailed and organized person, very sharp. And I had my own wedding and event planning company that was extremely successful. And suddenly, words were getting jumbled on a page and my whole cognition changed, memory changed. Physically, I was very weak. Um, and I struggled with letting that go. And um, not having it seemed like I had endless amounts of energy. So, and going from endless amounts of energy to barely able to get out of bed, it was really foreign to me. And I had to work through a lot of grief around that and letting go of the old and embracing the new.
Uh, you you said you said that the rare pituitary disease might not be rare as people think. Can you explain why that is?
Yes, because um, well, this is actually information I read as I started diving into this disease. I was like, okay, if I couldn't find the information, if it if the information's not out there, I have to get it out there. And so I started reading everything I could on pituitary tumors and all the diseases. You know, acromegaly isn't the only disease associated with pituitary tumors. A lot of people may have heard of Cushing's, um, which is only another among many. Um, and so I started reading everything I could, and I started reading how worldwide they were finding these tumors in autopsies. And and but people go undiagnosed for years and years and decades. Decades. I've probably had my tumor for decades. But it wasn't until I started noticing significant changes in my body. Oftentimes the changes happen so slowly that people don't realize they're happening. Or someone like me explains it away. Um, and also, yeah, I mean, sorry, I lost my thought there, but you know, they believe that one in four and a half, to be exact, but one in five people are actually walking around with these tumors. And unfortunately, they don't find them until, you know, it's too late, I should say, till they've already done extensive damage and the tumors have gotten so large, they're inoperable, fully inoperable. Um, so that's when I kind of ventured out to start getting the information out there.
So, what do you wish more doctors knew about diagnosing and treating acromegaly?
Um, yeah, so I think the first thing for me would be, you know, listen to your patients.
Um,
If, you know, take them seriously. Um, that would be my first thing. Um, and um, something else I discovered about, you know, pituitary tumors is, and this was something my neurosurgeon said. Um, so I remember asking, like, hey, is this cancerous? And um, and my doctor said, no, it's not cancerous. And I started hearing a lot of people saying, oh, well, it's a benign tumor. And my neurosurgeon said, I wouldn't call this benign by any means, because it's very destructive. These tumors can cause blindness, they can rupture, and then, like I said, they can cause various diseases that destroy the body over time. And so, yeah, so I think what felt important to me was how can doctors start diagnosing people sooner? If they catch the tumors sooner, earlier, um, you know, perhaps by listening to their patients, these patients can go on to live pretty close to a normal life.
You know what the average life expectancy for somebody with acromegaly is?
Yes, 56 years old.
Oh.
And that's if it goes untreated. Mhm.
Mm.
Um, and unfortunately, it's taking decades to find these tumors. And on average, these tumors are found people middle age, like around in their 40s,
Mm.
which is when I was diagnosed.
So, what advice would you give to someone who suspects they may have uh, acromegaly? They may have undiagnosed rare condition.
Mm. Well, I'm sure this has been repeated by many people who are in a similar circumstance as myself. But advocate, 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 speak up for yourself. Use your voice. If you have any doubt, anything in your gut, any instinct that's telling you something feels off, get it checked out. Our doctors work for us. We hire them to provide us a service, and so for me, I was willing to pay anything. I was willing to take any test, exams to rule it all out. I would have loved for my MRI to come back clean that day. I would have loved that. Regardless, I would have been so glad I demanded that MRI that day. And fortunately, in my circumstance, it saved my life. If I didn't have a pituitary tumor, well, then I could rule that out and have some peace of mind. Um, so yes, trust your gut, trust your instinct, and yeah, use your voice.
So, what has been the biggest challenge in advocating for yourself in medical community?
Yes, it's the biggest challenge is the medical professionals I've worked with aren't always receptive. Actually, most of the medical professionals I've worked with aren't receptive to collaborating with me, like seeing it as a co-active doctor-patient relationship. Like, how can we work as a team to do this? I fortunately found an endocrinologist who was willing to, she's willing to work with me. I've been with her since at the beginning of all this, and she's been just extremely supportive. If something's not working, let's try something else. If I want tests, she orders the tests. But we have conversation over it. It's a discussion, and it really feels collaborative. It feels like I have someone on my team. I've worked with other endocrinologists and medical professionals who I might not have the science brain behind it, but I understand myself more than anyone else. And it's amazing how medical doctors will fight me on that. Um, I had one doctor, I was on a medication that seemed to be working for the acromegaly, but it had some incredibly horrible adverse effects to my body and my well-being. And I went to this doctor and I said, look, this isn't working. And he's like, well, yes, it is. Your numbers are down. It is working. And I said, it's not working. It's not working for me. And he wasn't hearing it. He wasn't having it. Um, my quality of life was plummeting because of this medication, and that wasn't worth it. That wasn't worth it to me. And so, I went on to a new doctor, but um, yeah, still kind of butting up against some of those egos and doctors who, don't want to, like I said, work coactively with patients, with their patients.
You've spoken about your how your disease uh, reshaped you, um, your perspective. How has it changed your diagnosis? Excuse me. How has it changed your approach to life?
Yes, well, I became a better person. I it really forced me to start reflecting on my life and who I was as a person, who I no longer was, who I was going to be like with this new life and new circumstances. And I really made a conscious decision of, well, I can um I can embrace who I am, who I am now. I could start figuring out how to move forward with this new situation, and or I can focus on what I can't do, what I no longer can do, who I no longer will be. I decided I wanted to live. I wanted to start asking myself what I could do, what was possible. And I had a lot of doctors telling me, well, you shouldn't do that. You can't do that. And I made a conscious decision of, well, wait a minute. I get to decide how I'm going to move forward with my life. I get to determine what I can and can't do, what I should and shouldn't do. Like that's my decision. I get to choose that. And and so that's what I did. I decided I was like, I'm moving forward in life and I'm going to live bigger and better than before. I'm going to live all out. And I started my whole life was so rigid before. And I was this athlete and I was had this life, perfect life, and I was married to this man and we had a good marriage and that was going to be my life. And suddenly it was all taken away. It was all changed. And and I started really looking at all the things I was missing out on when I was living that rigid life. And I started writing down all the things I've ever wanted to do, all the things I've wanted to experience and try. And that was anywhere from like Bollywood dance lessons to like circus aerialist class, indoor skydiving, taking trips I always wanted to take. Um, for example, going to Peru, um, riding my bike across northern Spain. Always wanted to write a book. I added that to the list. So I mean, the list was just enormous. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe all this, I just ignored all of these other things in my life because I was being so rigid in it.
Yeah. So you've done a lot of traveling. What's your favorite place you've been to?
Oh gosh. I have to say unexpectedly, Nepal. I trekked to Everest Base Camp in Nepal, and the culture and the landscape were unlike anything I've ever experienced. And I've been to probably close to 30 countries, and that one just blew me away. It was really incredible, really incredible.
Uh, what are some of the biggest, so going back to the subject here, what are some of the biggest misconceptions people have about living with a chronic rare illness?
Um, some of the biggest misconceptions. I think what is that, well, one, and this kind of ties into your, the next question is, well, you look okay. Like you look fine, so you must be fine. Um, and so, but just because someone with chronic illness looks fine doesn't mean they're fine. And also that, well, chronic illness is treatable, right? You can just treat it and you're okay. Well, yeah, you have to be treated. You most often have to be treated, but it doesn't mean, okay, you're better. Like everything's good. I've had my treatment and I'm good. Like it just doesn't work that way. It's going to be the rest of your life. It's ongoing.
There's so many things you think you know, and then you don't really know it. It's like yeah, I've had in addition to I actually have multiple rare diseases, but this is a second one. This is called Dupuytren's contracture, and it's actually a benign uh, condition. But I've found that now I'm learning that just because it's benign doesn't mean it's harmless. And so um,
I love how you worded that. Absolutely. Absolutely.
but I did have radiation for this. It was like a 5-day treatment. I also had surgery since it's still a little contracted. I was trying to straighten it out more, but it worked for a little while and then it went back.
Hmm.
Um, so, see. Okay, so getting back into that part, what, so how do you deal with that comment, the, that you, okay?
That's a great question, Joanna. Um, because I still hear it so much to this day. Um, yeah, well, I would never know. I would never know. You look so great. You look great. And, I know I have to remember that the people saying that to me believe that they're being encouraging.
Mhm,
Their intentions are positive. And um, and I also use it as an opportunity to educate.
mhm,
And and as you probably know, um, educating people who aren't necessarily interested um, is you have to find a you have to find that perfect balance of educating in an interesting way without too much information, like short and simple, and you know something that can give them a glimpse into your world. And it's really challenging to do. The people around you, I think they care for you, so they don't, they're probably also uncomfortable with the changes going on and they don't know how to respond to it. And then there's the people outside, the strangers that don't even notice. And um, I think I just keep sharing information and being transparent. I think I'm over trying to convince everyone I'm okay. And now I'm honest. Now people ask me, "Oh, how are you doing?" I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted. And I think sometimes they're surprised by that answer. And sometimes I'll say, "Did you want a different answer?" I'm just being transparent. And
Yeah.
so that's all I can do for me is to just be me in the space I'm in at that time.
Mhm. Um, um, uh, yeah. Okay. How do you balance the need to rest and care for yourself with the desire to experience life to the fullest?
Yeah, I'm chuckling at this, Joanna, because this is this is probably the one thing I'm still fighting.
Yeah.
Um, uh, yes. I don't know what the right balance is. I think, I was always a big planner. I was always someone that had my whole year planned out and maybe into the next year. I could pack 5 things into one day and still have the energy to clean the house and cook dinner and do all the things. Um, so I think what's shifted for me in that is taking it day by day. What is the right balance for this day? Also gauging my energy levels. I don't pack in everything in one day now. I plan for, okay, okay, I've gotten, for example, I've been invited to 3 things this weekend. I know I'll only have the energy for 2. Which 2 things do I do? How much time do I devote to them? Um, and I also am learning to say no, and tapping into my own kind of that internal feeling of, will this feel good for me if I do this? Or is it just going to wipe me out for a week and keep me from doing anything else? So it's kind of a day-to-day basis, which I'm sure you can relate to, which is a big change for me as well. But yeah, the balance looks different each day.
Mhm. Um, so your book, the Road Unpaved, boarded a reporter with with a brain tumor and a bike, um, captures your journey in a powerful way. Um, what inspired you to write it?
Yes, well, I remember trying to I started off, let me back up a minute. The day I decided I wanted to live, the day I decided I get to choose how I move forward with my life was the day I decided I'm going to ride my bike from Canada to Mexico down the Pacific coast. Despite everyone telling me I shouldn't and all of that, I was like, this is what I got to do for me. I got to do this for my soul healing journey. I need something to live for. I need something for me. And I remember going around, I'm like, okay, maybe I can share my story on my bike ride with other people. Like, hey, I have this disease called acromegaly. These pituitary tumors are believed to not be so rare. Um, Maybe people will listen. And I started learning that the way I was reaching people, what caught their interest was through story, me sharing my experience through story and through my story. And they didn't care so much about the acromegaly or all that. They cared more about how I was living in spite of it. And I love the power of story. And one, writing a book was on my bucket list, and two, I got to share my story. And then I got to hopefully teach people along the way and educate them without them knowing it. So, um, and I started speaking for medical professionals. And after I'd speak, initially I was upset because they were like, tell me about this bike ride you're doing. And I'm like, why don't you want to ask me questions about my disease? I was really kind of upset at first, and then I started embracing it. Well, if this is how I get them to listen, this is what I'm going to do. And so I went on and I completed that bike journey. And then I went on to write a book about it. And it went on to be way more successful than I ever imagined. And and people are learning about it along the way and learning about themselves too. You don't have to like cycling or have a chronic condition to enjoy the story. Um, I just wanted to reach people.
So, um, what do you hope readers take away from your story?
Yes, well, it's what I've learned is, when what's been beautiful about it is I hear from people from all over the world, and it's always different what they gain from it. Um, but what I've learned is to, don't limit yourself. Sometimes it's just shifting your perspective or viewing things from a different angle. Um, Obstacles aren't meant there to stop you, aren't meant that to stop you or block you. They're just simply something to navigate, to go around, under, through. And and so I started taking that into the rest of my life. And more recently, for example, I always wanted to hike the Camino in Spain, the Camino de Santiago in Spain. And physically, I can't hike or walk that far anymore. My body just can't do that. But I can still ride my bike. So last summer, I rode my bike along the Camino de Santiago, and so I just had to shift my perspective on that. It's like, okay, I can't do it that way, but I can do it this way. And it's not exactly how I wanted it, but I'm just finding a different way to do it. Um and so yeah, don't limit yourself.
Let's see, looking forward, what's the what's next for you in terms of advocacy, adventure, and personal personal goals?
Yeah, so I started learning like how, again, the power of story and how much it impacts and inspires others. And so And I also learned that just simply sharing my story is healing for me in itself. And so so far, I've been on over 100 podcasts and radio shows and magazines and blogs and so forth. And so I want to continue on that journey. I really want um, pituitary tumors to be something that almost becomes a regular thing to check for. And and on a personal level, I want to keep living life full out, and that's like living it on my terms. I'm super passionate about advocating for patients who struggle with advocating for themselves. I'm passionate about showing up how I want to show up, being authentic and true to myself. And and enjoy. I hate to sound, with no pun intended, but enjoying the ride, like really enjoying the ride on my terms, and letting go of self-judgment, and and you know, yeah, being authentic and supporting others in their own journeys as well.
Mhm. Mhm. What advice do you have for others, for other facing life-altering decisions or diagnoses?
Yeah. Um, Again, use your voice, trust your gut, do the research, do the research. Um, One thing I've learned about people facing life-altering diagnoses is we tend to become experts in ourselves, you know, so don't put that in the hands of your doctor. They see hundreds of patients and they don't have time to research as much as you might wish they did. And I'm not going to speak for all medical professionals, or, there are some out there that, take an active interest, but from my own personal experience, it was really beneficial for me to do as much research as I can, reach out to other people that might have more information. For example, I connected with the Pituitary World organization, Pituitary World News organization, and they have a plethora of knowledge around pituitary tumors and the diseases they cause. And I've learned so much by doing that and reaching out. So I would say collect as much information as you can so that you can make really uh, really good educated decisions for how to move forward. And again, live life on your terms. You get to decide. You get to decide how you want to live.
So would you ever write another book?
I have one in the works. It's a continuation of my last book. It would probably include my Spain trip, my 500 miles across northern Spain, which challenged me in every way possible. Um, I'm also finishing up my screenplay for this book, The Road Unpaved, and that feels very exciting. Um,
So it's
so
being made into a
yes.
movie.
Sorry.
So it's being made into a movie.
Yes, yes. So um,
So when does that come out?
it's a very long, long process. So it could be years. It could be years before it comes out. But it was a lot. It's a lot of work to write a book. I had no idea, and a lot of effort, a lot of energy, a lot of promotion, time, money. I don't know. Again, I think it goes back to Joanna, what we were talking about with finding that balance. And so I'll just have to see, it might get to a point where, maybe I don't put another book out. Maybe something else comes up for me that I rather do. Again, I think it's day by day.
If you could go back and give yourself advice, uh, what's one piece of advice you would give yourself?
Yeah, this question's always challenging. I think going back is be you. I think I was a people pleaser and perfectionist growing up. I wanted to make sure everyone else was okay, and I wanted approval and acceptance from everyone. And I wish I wish I was unapologetically me growing up through all those years and speaking up when I needed to speak up and standing up when I needed to stand up. Um, and yeah, so I don't know if that's really advice, but I think I would say, oh, be you, girl, because you are fabulous.
So, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Our Connection. Um, a big thank you to Rissa for sharing her story, this incredible journey with us. Her story is a powerful reminder of resilience, self-discovery, and the importance of raising awareness for rare diseases like acromegaly. If uh, if you have if you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to subscribe to both my podcast, Rare Connection, and my YouTube channel, Rare Chef. Um, your support helps spread awareness and keeps these important conversations going. If you'd like to help fund the work that we're doing, you can donate through the support the show link in the show notes on the audio side of things. I'm not monetized on YouTube yet, but the audio side I am of this podcast. Please note that uh, donations are not tax deductible yet, as I'm still trying to get the 501c3. Um, and but every contribution will be going directly towards the nonprofit right now. And I'd like to hear from I'd like to hear from you. Um, I if you're listening to the audio version, you can reach out through the send us a text link in the show notes. If you're watching through the video version, you can leave a comment below. And if you're interested in being a guest on Our Connection, the show, on the show, you can email me through my either jball@rareconnection.org or joanna.ball41@gmail.com. Thanks for being part of this journey, and I'll see you next time on Our Connection. Thanks.